come to order at 3:30, July 12th, 2023. It was posted as a public hearing, notice of FY 2024 sewer rate hearing increase. The Warren Board of Sewer Commissioners will be having a public hearing on Wednesday, July 12th at 3:30 p.m. about a sewer fee increase for FY 2024. The location of the hearing will be in the Selectmen's Meeting Room in the Charles E. Shepherd Municipal Building, 48 High Street in Warren.
Joan, do we have to wait for Jim?
No.
We don't need Jim?
He'll be coming.
Oh, okay.
Does anybody have any comments right now? Dave?
No, I'm still trying to get caught up, I'm sorry.
Okay. Does anybody in the audience have any comments about the rate increase? Go ahead.
Well, first off, I'd like you not to have a rate increase. And secondarily, I think perhaps you should look at a different way of calibrating so that it's more equitable for people that are single, one person, two person, versus families with 7 or 8 people living in the same house. It doesn't seem proper that a single person should pay $400+ when someone with a large family pays the same amount.
When the plant was first built and came online in 1989, Ty and Bond drew up a plan for billing. And they did it so it wasn't equal for everybody. If we start to change it, there are a lot of people that are single and, well, even up and down housing. And if we were to lower all that, then the average person wouldn't be able to afford the sewer bill.
The average person, the single person is now paying, what is our rate, $450?
$495.
$495. So the average person is paying $495 now.
Right, but if we did what you said, then your rate would go down and everybody else's would be going up because right now we're not collecting enough money.
Right, that's why I'm suggesting that you do something different, perhaps team with the water department and go by those that have water, set that rate based on how much water usage there is. Those that don't have town water, set them at a separate rate. Even if you keep those of us that are smaller, okay, at the $495, you could gain money by charging people with larger families additional money. So instead of considering dropping the rates, you could charge people for the amount that they use more than saying, you know, I got one person living in this house, there's only one person living in this house, down the street there's 5 people living in the house. They pay the same amount. In this world where equity is important, that doesn't seem like that's just and proper for anyone. That's not what is done in other departments.
Well, in this particular case, that's how Ty and Bond set it up, and it was with the blessing of the DEP and all those people.
So you don't feel that there's something that you can do to make it
I don't know
a
what
better
we could do.
situation at this point? I mean, change means growth, okay? That's what change means. Change doesn't mean that it's a bad thing. I mean, I think it would be wise for you to look into something like that that would make it more reasonable for everyone.
Well, we could look into it, and it's been looked into before,
Look
and
who's here.
it's always been determined that it wasn't a wise thing to do.
By whom?
By the people that were looking into it. We had Ty and Bond take care of all that stuff.
Well, I think you need to check again. I would appreciate that if you look into that again.
Yes, sir.
Is there a town or state bylaw that requires property where the sewer line goes by for them to connect?
In some towns there is, I don't believe we
Oh, I'm
have
talking
that.
about, this is Warren.
We don't have that,
Okay. It's not a state law.
not that I know of. I know they do that in the cities, but we have never done that. we could, if it meant a lot more. I don't think there are that many that are not tied in.
Do you know how many are not tied
No.
in that are on the sewer line?
No?
Does
Well,
anybody?
no, if they're on the sewer line, they
Well-
should be tied in.
Adjacent to the sewer
Yeah.
line?
No,
Does anybody?
I don't believe so. I thought everybody that ran along the line now, about now, was tied in. So, that's all I can tell you about that.
Well, there are a few properties where the sewer line runs by and they never connected because it would be unfeasible for them to do so
Right, so
because
they
they
have
have
a set-
setbacks quite far from the road.
So there's stipulations that if you,
So if there, a good example, we had Evergreen Mobile Home Park years ago that had a failing septic system, and they're located off on Broomfield Road. And they they looked into connecting to town sewer, and because there's no sewer access close to where they are, they found out it would cost a lot
Yeah,
less to
Joan.
replace the septic system rather than connect to town sewer, because the nearest stub to where they were at the time was like, I think about a quarter of a mile up the road. So that is a good example I can think of where somebody replaced the septic system rather than connect to town sewer, because I believe it would have cost them like 4 times more to connect to town sewer than to replace the septic system.
or is there a definite footage from the street then?
No.
Or that you
No,
use?
we don't have any bylaw dictating a certain footage, and there's a lot of variables that go into that, like how steep the setback is, whether there's ledge, so there's a lot of variables that would factor into something like that.
Anything else? Go ahead.
Well, concerned that the town did not have a sewer system before 1948. And sewer lines have been put on just about most of the major streets. So like, for water alone, I pay probably $340 a year. So if you're asking me to pay almost $500 for sewer, what exactly is the reason for the rate hike? Is it chemicals?
Everything. Ralph, you wanna take that one?
Well, there certainly is a increase in chemicals, just like everything else. But we also have a lot of antiquated equipment that at some point in time are just not gonna be able to function, period. So I'm now the new chief operator down there, and I'm trying to upgrade the equipment so that in the future, these breakdowns won't happen. That's the major increase that I'm thinking.
Because it's getting to the point where this is almost getting to the point of a fifth tax bill. And I'm on Social Security. It's difficult enough for me to take half my check in order to pay the quarterly tax bill. But now I'm gonna have to dig up money for a sewer bill that's getting pretty close to that amount.
Okay, and one other thing I'd like to add, beyond the town, the EPA is continually putting stricter requirements on what I discharge, which means new, different equipment to meet those goals. They continue to lower the percentage rates of the different things that I can release, such as copper and those things. So a lot of it is due to that also, or part of it's due to that also. So it's a combination of 3 things. 1, cost, 2, the restrictions from the EPA, and 3, upgrading the plant to keep it functional.
Bob, I handled chemicals at Hardwick Nettis for 37 years. And one of the major problems we had was between midnight and 5 a.m. Any water we pumped out of the river, we had to treat because the pH was 1, same as sulfuric acid. We had to actually bring it back to 7
Right,
before we could even use it.
right.
And if somebody upstream is dumping in the river, it's going all the way down here.
Yeah. Well, to the best of my knowledge, and I'm not super familiar with Town of Warren, I've only been here for a year, but to the best of my knowledge, most of the sewer systems are separated. So we should not be receiving water from other than what Warren is putting in. Now, certainly if there's somebody upstream putting it into the river, I have no control of that, but what they look at for me is I have to take the discharge before it goes into the river and ensure that it's proper quality and meets their limits.
It has to be a pH 7.
Yeah, pH 7, there is a range, but there's also copper and phosphorus and several other things that the EPA is regulating in our discharge permit, and they keep getting stricter. We did just receive a new permit this year, and there is quite a few changes. And again, it gets much stricter. They never loosen up.
Are there any grants available to help with the need for purchasing new equipment? Jim, I know this is an enterprise, which I don't understand exactly what that means.
Yeah.
We've been putting money for our town meetings, we've been putting a lot of money into certain funds.
Sure.
Is there any money available in those funds to help defray the costs that they're trying to put on these sewer,
Sure.
the people in the sewer?
That's an excellent question, Cindy. And let me explain this a little bit more in detail here and kind of give you an idea of how we got here. Historically, the town, for a long period, there was a study that was done by Ty and Bond a few years ago. And in the study, it identified that one of the deficiencies that the town has had was they consistently, year after year, never raised the sewer fees, the actual fees itself. Whether it be the sewer rate fees or the connection fees, they never raised them for a long period of time, which has now, unfortunately, put us in a predicament of trying to catch up, okay? And when you try to catch up, you're talking about, from last year was around 430, now it's 495. So it's a bigger increase as you continue to go forward. Ty and Bond has recommended an increase of about 15% each year in order to catch up to meet the ongoing costs of operating the plant. And to give you an idea and a perspective of where we are with the operations of the plant, year after year, consistently, the town has had to, or the sewer department has had to rely on its called quote-unquote retained earnings to balance their budget. Now, the term retained earnings is similar to the town's free cash position. Retained earnings is extra revenue that it has received in order to offset some of the operational costs. And every year, because the sewer rate has never increased in the years for quite a bit of span of period of time, the sewer department had to dip into that, whether it be 70,000, 100,000, to dip into that, leading us now to a current retained earnings of about $135,000. So the enterprise fund, what an enterprise fund is the purpose of an enterprise fund is you're providing a service and you're charging a fee for that service, and that fee is to cover the cost of performing that entire service. So what is now happening is that the enterprise fund is not theoretically working in that same method. We are charging a fee, but it's not covering the cost of operations. And in order to cover the cost of operations, you have to increase the fee or get additional users to hook up to the sewer system so that you expand your base of operations and your charging base. We have plenty of capacity to handle, more users. There's no question. It's extending the sewer lines. It's, doing more development in town, getting more users on board. Unfortunately, that doesn't happen overnight. That's a big process that's gonna take, years in planning to get there. I'm hopeful that, there's the Rice Mills complex is currently listed for sale. I'm hopeful that there's some developer that wants to come in there, which would, obviously, increase capacity, increase users, put buildings back online, create economic development. The more people that build homes, more economic development. If we can extend sewer lines, I want to work with the sewer commissioners to see if we can extend lines where reasonable. But obviously, if you extend lines, it's going to cost some money to do that. But we have to do it methodically and try to see where we can get the best bang for our buck, where we can get more users onto the system. But those are the critical pieces here that is causing this problem. Is number one, the continuing rise of costs, and the charge for the service is not covering the cost.
I'm gonna go back to a question that I asked before you came in the room.
Mhm.
And I know Ty and Bond, we work with them in the water
Yeah.
department. There are multiple, that fee that we're being charged for that service is the same amount per household. Whether there's one person, as this gentleman right in front of us, 2 people, 7 people.
Mhm.
It's the same amount. It would seem to make sense, if you need to make more money to pay for the service, that people that are a single person or just 2 people are not producing as much usage as larger groups. I think it would be prudent, while we wait for more people to come into town and to expand our system, that we come up with a better way so those people that are using more services pay for more services. A lot of communities judge the amount of charge for the sewer based on the water usage. Now, not everybody uses the water, but most people do, so you could set a rate for the people that don't and prorate for the people that do. And I know that there's a process, and I know that it's gonna take people to wanna do this, but it seems to me that that would be a more appropriate, more responsible attitude for the town to have than to take this gentleman here, who's all by himself, and tell him, geez, you know what, I'm sorry, but you're gonna pay $1,000 a year because we don't wanna put somebody to task to have them look into this and do the reasonable thing.
Mhm.
I mean, I'd like to know what the school is paying for their sewer.
So, there's two different scenarios, so, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe residential has one rate, and then commercial has a different rate, and it's done on the
Basically,
EDUs.
there's 3 different ways of billing. Residential, and some of the businesses are billed at the flat fee per EDU. This, commercial users will pay $6.79 per 1,000 gallons, and those are all users that are connected to town water, so we're able to get meter readings on them. The 2 laundromats, the village car wash, and now the Warren Water District's new filtration plant. Those are the 4 users that we bill strictly based on gallons of water used.
So not the school?
The school gets billed based on the number of employees and students. They get a request at the beginning of the school year asking for the number of staff and students. And actually, out of all the users that are billed as commercial users, they have the largest bills out of all the commercial users.
So you
What
already,
commercial do we have in this town? Everybody's left. I mean, what
Well,
do you
I
got?
mean,
You got a couple of
outside
package
of the
stores and
school,
bars.
outside of the school, the only other fairly
Warren Pumps.
sizable user we have is Circor Naval Solutions. And, you know, they get billed based on the number of employees, so they, last year, they paid over $9,000 in sewer fees.
well, you know, it seems like you already have the system in place, that you've got a handful of people, handful of commercial businesses you're doing that for. And that's wonderful for them, and I'm glad for them, because they're not getting overcharged. But to me, if you can't put that in the hands of the taxpayers and give them the same due diligence in making sure that we are being charged what we should be charged, I think that's an error on the part of the board, and I think it doesn't speak well for the town. That you have, this gentleman here is paying $500 a year versus the pump shop, which you said is paying what, $9,000? Is that what you said?
Yes, 9,000.
Okay, so when you look at it, this one gentleman here is paying a lot more money for one person than the pump shop is, and they use water and sewer and all that stuff for all of their production purposes. So it would seem that it would be more prudent to give some thought to doing something a little differently. Change
Based on
things
water
up.
usage.
Base it on your water usage. You're already doing that, Lisa.
But there are quite a sizable amount of properties that have sewer but not water.
Well, then you just give them a set rate. You determine a set rate for those people that don't have
Not
a,
as easy as it sounds.
don't have it. Well, I know it's not easy, trust me. We just went through building a huge water treatment plant, and nothing is as easy as it sounds. But we did not do it because it was too hard. We did it was because the people wanted that to be done, and we took that into our thought pattern that this is what the people want to have done. This is fair for the people, to give them something that's just and reasonable, and we had to charge everybody an extra $42 every quarter for their cost of the loan. So it's not cheap and easy and free for anyone. But it seems to me that it would be proper for the town, if we're gonna move forward and we're gonna make the town grow, and we wanna include other people into our system, we need to make it fair and reasonable. That's just what I think.
Okay, does anybody else have any other input?
I agree with every word she said. Just because I'm married, don't take that to heart. But it makes sense that somebody who uses a lot of water at their property should pay more in sewage. It's like, duh. And you got this guy all by himself paying that kind of money.
And he's not the
Well,
only.
I'm gonna go back to my original statement. There are properties in town, I believe, that are not connected to the sewer line. And I think someone should do some sort of a survey and determine how many houses or properties that is, and then extrapolate that out and see what the cost would be if those properties were on the line. And maybe give them a break over the next year or so, let's say, to connect to the sewer line. And I'm talking about ones that are already on an existing line, not a new line, going forward. And then, then you'll have these additional users to absorb some of the costs. But somebody has to, determine which houses, which properties are not connected. And there may be some out there that should be connected.
Well, from my experience, take South Street, for instance, the sewer line was extended down to Warren Community Elementary School back in 2011. And there again, there are several properties that connected to town sewer after that extension was done. We don't have a bylaw requiring people to connect. So most of the people who connected were people whose septic systems weren't that good. The sewer line was running by their house and they decided to connect. However, there are there again, if we did a survey of the properties and all, there would be some properties where it'd be unfeasible to connect to town sewer because of setback or cost.
I understand.
Like there was actually one house on South Street that got sold, and I was contacted about whether it was on town sewer, and, you know, it was a property that was set back so far from the road, it was more feasible for them to replace the septic system and connect. So we can do a survey of properties, but there's no bylaw that, like if someone, you know, I would imagine anyone who's on a road where the sewer runs by and it's feasible for them to connect, if their septic system was starting to fail, they would probably prefer to do that rather than replace the septic system.
There are towns that do charge you if they run it by the house.
They do, yeah.
Yeah. My family has houses that I had to connect because they ran it up the street.
Does the sewer department have a physical map showing where all the sewer lines are? Because then you would know, well, this house isn't connected, we could even ask them if they want to connect.
I could answer that, no.
There is nothing.
Nothing.
We've been
There's
trying,
no map?
we've been trying to get a map of our vertical
You gotta
for
be kidding me.
2.5.
Where about you live?
So basically,
Chapel Street in West Warren.
I don't have maps of individual sewer laterals for the older properties in town where they were connected decades ago. I do have maps of the sewer connection for the recent sewer connection permits, like the ones that were done within the last, say, 20 years or so. But I don't have any maps of individual sewer connections that were done, say, back in the 1960s or 70s or whatever.
There should be on the rack in there, right?
Yeah, but they
On the racks with the
rotted.
maps?
There are some, there's
They
probably.
rotted from the chemicals.
Yeah, I don't know the exact percentage of how much is truly documented, but any of the newer lines that have been put in, there is documentation. Not all of them have laterals that's shown on those, they do show with the mains.
I mean, that would make it easier. All right, the line ends here. If we extended this another half mile, how many houses could we get?
Yeah. There's also a cost to it. You know, you gotta think asphalt, material, labor,
Yeah, I know.
insurances.
All right, we're gonna close the hearing now and we'll take.
So how much
everything
of a rate
under
are you talking about for an increase?
We haven't discussed it yet.
I think it would be nice if we could just have a breather someplace in the town. I mean, everybody has been going up, it would be nice if we could just have a breather for a year without an increase. You know, I think that would probably help everyone sleep just a bit better, if that's possible. While you
It'd be
figure out a
cheaper to
bit.
put my own system in.
While you figure out a better way that would actually earn us more money. I think that would be a hallelujah moment.
So we'll have to take that under advisement and talk about it. We haven't discussed it at all.
Thank you.
And is it a possibility, well, I guess it depends on what the increase is, but would it be feasible to have more than one bill?
We thought
For a
about
year?
that.
You know, splitting it up, two or three times a year?
Quarterly.
And have it on a different quarter than the tax bill and the water bill. That'd be nice.
You know, that has been, I brought that up at the last increase that was discussed last year. You know, I would highly recommend, you know, at the very least to, you know, break it up for people to, you know, to be able to make installment payments.
But that people are able to do that now. We have a few dozen sewer users who make partial payments on their sewer bill. We do not stop people from doing that. I mean, we have, I'm gonna say probably a little bit over 3 dozen users in town who make partial
I
payments.
think what they're getting at, Lisa, is to know that you're gonna have a sewer bill coming in 4 months. So you can put that aside, you know what I mean, do it quarterly, 3 times, even twice a year. You know?
And I agree.
That's a good idea.
The sporadic way of doing it, some people are gonna, forget about it or whatever. I think if you've got a bill
Well,
2 or 3 times a
so
year.
what I do is every year, if the sewer bill, if someone hasn't made any payments on their sewer bill in January, I send a reminder letter out to let people know we never got any payments for the sewer bill. It, basically reminding them they need to pay it. So in essence, the people that have paid the full amount of their bill by January don't get a letter, and I send the reminder letters out in case someone forgot about their bill, just as a reminder that, it's the middle of the year and, this is what you owe on your sewer bill. So that, I do send reminder letters out to the property owners who haven't paid anything on their sewer bill in January, so that way they have a chance to pay it before the new bill comes out
Well,
in
that's
July.
that's a hefty bill for a lot of people. If it's split up, it'd be a lot easier for everybody.
And not only that, you know when the funds are coming in. It's, it's not sporadic.
Especially at the end of the year.
You had,
Everybody's got stuff going on.
you had a question?
No, that was he took my question.
Oh, okay.
And getting back to your place, you don't have a lateral?
What's that?
Do you have a lateral going in?
We have a common lateral with a neighbor behind us.
Really?
That's why we're here,
Okay.
because that brings up a whole nother issue.
Excuse me, they're on the agenda for the
Number
meeting.
7.
Okay, all right,
So this
yep.
is the rate increase hearing.
I just happened to think. Okay.
I'm gonna close the hearing now. Can I have a motion to close the hearing?
I make a motion, we close the meeting at 4:01? 4:02.
Semantics.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Everybody in favor?
There's no more questions, or everybody said what they wanna say?
I would like the commissioners to take into advisement what has been said here and give it some serious thought. Instead of walking out of here and saying, well, that's not business as usual, so we can't be bothered. When you've got a lot of people who are retired in this town, this is not Springfield or Holyoke or Wilbraham for that matter, where people can pull money out of their butts anytime they need it. Most of the people in this town are on fixed incomes. You need to take that into account instead of slamming them at the end of the year with another $500 bill. That's my say.
And you just said yourself that, if people are on fixed incomes, well, so are families with many children.
I'm not saying they aren't.
No, but I'm
But to
saying.
nail them at the end of the year, when everything else is going on in people's lives, it's kind of like a mess up.
What do you mean the end of the year?
Well,
Don't we have Christmas in December?
the bills come out in October, I think.
The bills will be out in August.
There's no reason why they can't be broken up throughout the year, is my point. I know you don't want to do it because it's too much work. I'm getting riled up now, I'll shut up.
I don't understand, this is a rate hearing, but you're not talking about any rates.
Well, we wanted input from the public
Exactly.
and,
Well, you got input, but we didn't hear any
well, he told you.
information from you.
He told you before that Ty and Bond had recommended we do 15% every year. And we haven't decided if we're gonna do that or not,
Well, when will you decide that?
when we discuss it.
And you'll discuss it after you dismiss us, or?
Either this meeting or next meeting, depending on the time.
Is there any possibility of also considering going up on the cost of the tie-in fees for new homes coming in?
That will come up at another time, we are gonna do that.
Good, it's good, Chip. We did that at the water department.
But we haven't set a price yet or anything.
Or you can, what we did is considered what other towns were doing around us. come up with something that would get us a bit more.
And I know you're upset about the rates, but Warren is probably one of the lowest prices around
This is
for
the
the
next
sewer
meeting.
rates. So,
But we're one of the brokest group of people
well, when you
around.
think of some of these other towns, they're not too rich. Like North Brookfield and Barry and all of those, Gilbertville.
Have you done a study comparing?
Yeah.
Yes.
Do you have some numbers on that? I mean, I know when the
Well,
school
we-
committee was speaking to us about, you know, the other towns that were similar, the towns that they were using that were similar to us were not similar to us. They
Right.
made a lot more money than we made, so they weren't similar to us. So I think it's important that you're looking at a town that's got the kind of per capita we have and the amount of people we have, in the town. Because they weren't similar. They were saying they were similar, but they weren't, and that was brought up, that it wasn't similar.
Well, I know my husband, I know when Ty and Bond did the rate study, they did compare our rates with those of other towns. But I know my husband has an aunt who since passed away, but she used to live in Gilbertville. And this was back in like 2010, her annual sewer bill, and this was for an elderly woman living alone. She was paying over $500 a year on her sewer bill over, like 14 years ago.
How many people were on the sewer in Gilbertville? There must have been less people than we have.
Well, I know they put more people on the sewer in Hardwick. I know they ran the sewer line up so Eagle Hill School could be on
Good
sewer.
choice, yeah.
But at the time, my husband's aunt was getting a sewer bill. I mean, there again, Gilbertville is one of those towns that has the same problem we have. They have very few commercial users.
No, we closed the hearing, right?
Right?
Yes.
We closed the hearing.
We close this hearing, yes.
Single. I don't know why we even had a hearing.
Dave, can you see the clock?
Yep,
What time is it?
4:09.
Okay. Our regular meeting is called to order at 4:09 PM, July 12th, 2023. Do you have your agenda?
I got it right here, I think. I think that's for the hearing, right?
It's we have the regular meeting.
Was it July 12th, 3:30?
So,
There was two of them, two postings.
Okay.
Madam Chair, is there gonna be a discussion on the, what the sewer rates are gonna be, this afternoon, or?
That's a
That's what
secret.
I asked.
I thought that's why we were here.
Yes. We were here to get an input.
That's kind of funny.
All right, the hearing's closed, but
I mean, the hearing is closed, so I mean, you don't have to accept more public testimony, so, but you can certainly, deliberate as to what the board, would want to do.
Dave, do you have any, Howie? Do you have any input on what you want to do with the rates?
I don't know, I'd like to see what the chemical increases were, before I make a decision on that. I know ours went up.
Can I test things and,
I mean, I can add some testimony in terms of costs, that I was able to put together here. For example, this particular year, and I'm not sure, Dave, if you're aware of this or not, but, the cost of operations in terms of, you know, the services that contractually that have been obligated in the supplies has run over budget into the sewer department. And so what has happened is because of this, you know, increase in utility costs, increase in supplies and chemicals, and now there's a new hauling contract that needs to be renegotiated for the sludge. All of this stuff has accumulated and caused the enterprise fund to run a deficit. And the sewer commissioners needed to go to the finance committee last month to get a reserve account transfer. That reserve account transfer was approximately $25,000 to fund the operations, to continually fund the operations. So if that doesn't tell you right there that there's not enough money that is, you know, allocated to run the operation, I don't know what is. Supplies have significantly gone up. The cost of wages continue to go up. And, you know, we're not seeing any boom in economic development, which is causing additional users to come onto the system. So it's critical to understand that the only way to get around this is to either raise the rate or have additional users come on. We're trying to be as creative as we can with you know, trying to find some avenues of saving some money. You know, we're gonna send out an RFP for a new sludge contract. You know, that's gonna be on the next agenda. We'll see what, you know, what that will bring. But unfortunately, that's the situation, you know, the department's been in the last, you know, few months.
Now, Ty and Bond has already figured that out, right?
Figured what out?
The expense, you know, our added expenses, what the rate is gonna have to go.
Well, the Ty and Bond has suggested a rate increase, you know, a consistent rate increase of 15%. Last year, it wasn't increased 15%. So every year that you don't increase it, you have to make it up in order to get to where you're going to be self-sufficient. At some point, the retained earnings is gonna run out, and you're not gonna have enough to continue to run and fund the operation. That's the reality of it. So, you know, I know it's a very tough position to be in, and, you know, there's a lot of maintenance that has been deferred for years down at that plant. So, you know, it's gonna take some time to get, you know, this back into, you know, operation.
Just maybe, Jim, we can deal with the figures this year. Who knows? They might go down next year.
Well, you know.
Things go up and down.
You know, according to the report of Ty and Bond, I mean, they had
Yeah.
recommended, you know, the next
You
6
gotta
to
deal
7
with it
years.
every year.
Yeah, you gotta deal with it, and unfortunately, a full 15% wasn't done last year, so you gotta, you know, if you don't continue on their suggested path, you're gonna have to make it up. You know, you're falling further behind. You know, it's really unfortunate. It really is.
So in other words, Time Bond wanted us to do 15% a year.
Right.
I would like to see it broken up, you know, by yearly or whatever, you know what I mean? So it's not as hard on the people.
Yeah, I mean, I suggested last year if you could do biannually billing, you know, send a bill once in the fall and once in the spring, you know, then you know exactly when you're gonna get the money, you know, to fund the operation, you know, let people know that you're gonna do biannually billing, you know, if the bill's $495 now and, you know, it goes up to, you know, I don't know, $550, you know, or $560, you know, cut it in half and do half now and half in the fall.
Does that make sense to the public? I mean, a lot of people are struggling.
I mean, it's everywhere. It's really an unfortunate situation. And the irony of it is that there's too much money out there. That's the problem. The governments have flooded the markets with all this money, is driving all these prices through the roof. There's too much money on the street right now. That's the main part of this. All that COVID money, all that money that flooded the markets, no, now you gotta pay for it.
Well, there again, if I was gonna send out 2 bills a year, Dawn is the one who collects the bills, and then I would have to, my software would have to be reconfigured for that, so I would have to set that up if that's what we're gonna do, and that can't be a 12th hour decision. It would have to be something that would probably be decided several months before the new billing cycle.
I don't think that should be a problem. I think that we can do that.
Now, was that something we're gonna have to decide
Yep.
this meeting?
Well, if you want to, if somebody's got a figure.
Well, the way I see it is what Ralph told us, that we gotta go 15%, we gotta. There's no other way around it, the way I see it.
So,
It'd be like another $44.
$74.
I'm gonna say 44 per bill if we go biannual.
Right. Well, actually, it'd be $37 per bill.
I
And what would be
calculator's slow.
What's the total, the 15%?
Well, you're at $495 right now, right?
Right, but
So-
I'm not a calculator.
So it would be $74.25, I believe, would be 15%.
I didn't write the 95.
So if you did 74.25 plus 495, you're at 569.25.
Or 570.
Do it in even 570, and then you go 570 divided by 2, you're at 285 a pay period, a season. If you did one in the fall, one in the spring.
I think it'd be a lot easier for people to handle, you know, myself.
Howie, how do you think? Is that all right?
Yeah,
So is there a motion?
I'll make a motion that we divide the billing period into 2 separate payments. What was your mantra?
It'd be 285 a piece,
285,
one in the fall, one in the spring.
yeah, one in the fall, one in the spring.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Get your new rate.
Okay, there's also a discussion of increasing the sewer connection fees.
What is it gonna be,
285.
570?
570.
Okay, a year.
Yeah. With biannual billing, one in the fall and one in the spring.
And is there any figures for the tie-in fees?
I don't have one, I haven't thought of that.
Howie? Do you have an idea what you want to charge for tie-in?
What are we paying, 570?
Well,
For tie-in fees? 500.
I know we went up.
What did you guys go up to?
I've been so busy with that plant, I couldn't tell you.
Well, I think, if you're gonna go up on the rate, I think you have to go up somewhat on the connection fees, you
So
know.
1,000?
I don't know if you wanna double it, maybe, $750, I don't know.
I was thinking about 700, 650, 700.
Yeah.
There'll be a little bit more. I mean, if we're gonna do it, we're gonna do it, because people are building houses now.
So what do we got for a number?
550 or 600, what do you think, Howie? For tie-ins?
Well, if we're gonna have a rate increase for tie-ins, that's very low. I mean, I'm against going too high. I know Palmer has 1,500.
Yeah.
I don't wanna go that high, but, we should go higher than that. It's,
You want it 800?
yeah.
Go ahead, throw a figure.
You're supposed to be throwing them out. I'm just listening. That would be fine.
800.
Yeah. Howard, what do you think about 800?
Well, what was that number, 800?
Yeah.
For a tie-in fee.
Yeah, I can work with that.
Okay.
Wanna make a motion?
I'll make a motion that we charge $800 for the tie-in fee on new services.
Nothing more to be said?
Nope.
You gonna
So
second-
800?
You gonna second that?
I'll second that.
Okay,
I'll
all in
second that.
favor?
Okay. Aye.
Ralph, you got that? 800.
Could you please notify who collects the tie-in fees, the treasurer?
I turned them over to her.
Or who collects them? Does Ralph collect it?
No, usually Lisa does when
Lisa
they
does.
apply.
Usually they give the check to me and then I turn it over to the treasurer.
Okay, all right. We should just notify everybody of the new
Well-
rates.
Yeah, when they send the plans in, it's usually accompanied.
Well, I'll have to let Dawn know that we're gonna be billing twice a year instead of once a
Mhm.
year.
Before we get into the other stuff, do you think we ought to take these people here?
Sure. No, that's all
No,
right.
no, you should, yeah, take these people.
I know what Chapel Street is, I'm not familiar with your situation. You got a house behind you and it's,
Want to start about from the beginning? It's 3 houses, all tied into a common sewer drain. One house has since disconnected. The house behind us had a clog in their drain. They hired a plumber to come and fix it. Well, where did all that sewage go? My house, because I'm the lowest part.
oh wow.
So my house flooded with sewer, raw sewage. We couldn't live there for a week. Town's not helping us at all. Didn't know why we were on the warrant.
Is that by that little access road?
What's that?
Is that your property near that little road that goes from Chapel up to north? I'm trying to picture what it is.
Nope. We're on the corner of, almost on the corner of Central. We're right across from Dean.
Okay.
So there's 3 houses. When the sewer was put in on Central Street, those 3 houses were given the option to run their own sewer. They elected to stay on the common drain. Now we have problems.
Their house was the newest one in that group.
Yep,
too,
yep.
and you know
We
the
asked
amounts.
for plans of where the verticals were, if we were even tied into town sewer, because we didn't know. And we were told, no idea. That
Really?
the common drain was illegal and it was our problem.
Really?
That's the old Centric's house.
Yep.
Uncle built that house.
Yep, so you must be related to Chrissy next door. Chrissy, Nutter is her maiden name. Yep. So didn't know if there was any discussion or anything.
I mean, why we were even on your agenda in the first place. I saw my name on the calendar, so I figured I'd come and see what you had to
You
discuss.
told her you might come to the meeting.
Yep.
So if you're not on the agenda,
Jim
You
had
can't
asked
take
me
part.
to
Okay.
put you on the agenda.
Okay.
No one ever contacted me directly, but I was told by Jim to put you on the agenda that
Okay.
you were planning to attend the meeting.
Yep.
Okay.
I know years ago they extended up to Dean Park.
Yep, there's sewer there, there's sewer on Central, there's sewer that goes right by our house. But we're still tied into the drain
Shared.
behind, the shared drain. So I don't know, because it's shared, I don't know if there's a right of way or some sort of easement access. I don't know.
Have you gone to the assessors?
No.
They will have a plan.
We've talked to several town officials who've never advised to go to the assessor.
Well, unless it was owned by one family, all them houses.
Wanna write that on the assessor?
I would go to the assessors just to see if they have anything with their
There's no right of way on our deed, or any easement marked on the deed.
Well, I wasn't specifically asked about an easement, I was asked for a map of the sewer lateral, which I unfortunately didn't have.
Yep.
And I mean, as far as easements.
That was me, okay?
Yeah.
I'm just learning about all this, so maybe you could have said something.
Well, maybe I misunderstood, but when you contacted me, first of all, you asked me what your property was listed as in the assessors, and I understood you to mean the property ID, which I looked up and I read to you, and then you wanted to know about the sewer line, and I told you that I did not have a map of it.
Yeah, you couldn't get into the system.
I didn't sign them,
I know, I'm looking for something.
I'm not
I'll
sure.
wait till we get done.
The
Yeah.
assessors, they usually have, they have property ID codes assigned to each property, and they usually have a chart
It's not
of the
gonna
lot.
override me signing paperwork
And
when
they
they're
show
talking.
floor plan of the house. I personally have never seen a map of the sewer line on any of the assessors' records I looked up. I mean, if there's any easements, they would have that information, like if there's an easement for,
Yeah, they should be on
Yeah.
there, should be on the maps.
Well, do you have any of the maps from the 80s?
Well, I was involved with this, and, you know, as I spoke to both of you, I do have maps of all the mains. They do not show laterals, and they would not, there was nothing showing that there were three people tied into one lateral on any type of documentation I have. Again, the only laterals that I see is on the newer documentation when newer lines were put in, or anything that Ty and Bond had documented. So there are some, like on South Street, there's good documentation as far as laterals, where they're at, within reason. But all of the older documentation does not show any lateral connections.
Ralph, when you were working there, can you see where their sewer is coming out?
I cannot.
You didn't even look.
We just jetted the line from Central Street to in front of our house.
Yeah.
It took for us to have a drain cleaner to come out to finish cleaning the line all the way out to the street from in my house, and to make sure everything from the gentleman behind us worked from his house to my house to the street.
Correct.
Yeah. We asked you to do a dye test from our house.
Mm.
Nothing. Dye test from Tom McKeon's. Nothing.
The dye test wouldn't have told us that.
It would have told us what it's not.
I don't understand. And if there was